Welcome to the Taxiway Podcast. My name's Fabian, your lead ramp agent. If you enjoy the episode, please subscribe and follow on YouTube and on Spotify. So after a lot of movement last season and some off-season acquisitions, the Infield core is going to look a little different in 2026. In this episode, I'm going to go player by player to see who is most likely to be a starter at each position. And keep in mind that spring training is always a threat to these predictions, so just keep that in mind. So we have a lot to cover, so let's get started. And as I go through these names, it's not in any particular order. First up, we have the newly acquired Joey Meneses, a 33-year-old veteran who played for the Mets last season. And not the Mets, but the Syracuse Mets, the Mets AAA affiliate. After last season, he went on to the free agent market, where the A's picked him up on a minor league deal. Next up, Luke Mann, 25, was called up from AA Midland on September 2nd, and he made the most of this opportunity. The most memorable thing during his time with Vegas was his performances during the playoffs, but we'll revisit his postseason heroics in greater detail when we discuss the hot corner. On paper, he's listed as a third baseman, but last season he logged most of his time at first base with the Aviators. After Luke Mann, we have Colby Halter, the 24-year-old lefty, started with AA Midland in 2025 and was promoted to Vegas on August 2nd. Last season, he struggled with the transition from AA to AAA. But fun fact about Colby Halter, last season was actually his first season playing first base at any level, and you really couldn't tell. It's the same story with Luke Mann. He's a third baseman on paper, but saw most of his time at first. And finally, we have Shane McGuire. Shane was covered extensively in our catching core episode, so if you haven't checked that out, I'd recommend that you check it out. And he rounds out the group. So now that we have all the names and a brief introduction, I'm going to go over how I think the depth chart will look for first base. I think Joey Meneses will get the nod to be the everyday first baseman due to several stats that he excels at compared to the others. Meneses leads the pack with a beefy .477 slug and a 14.8% strikeout rate. He leads with his run production at 98 WRC+. In layman's terms, he has power and doesn't strike out a lot. And second is Shane McGuire. He has the highest batting average at .275 and an on-base percentage of .392. He also has the highest walk rate, 12.5, and chases the least outside the zone. He's also proven that he can play the position well. After him, I have Colby Halter. Now, this might be strange, especially if you know about Halter's struggles last year. He hit 203, 326, 364 with the Aviators. However, with AA Midland, he slashed 280, 381, 424 with a 374 WOBA and a 127 WRC+. For comparison, that's actually better than most of the guys on this list. If he can crack the code with Vegas, he would be an extremely helpful asset to the club. And so those numbers that I mentioned earlier, he has a lot of power. He can get a lot of extra bases with each swing, and he can generate a lot of runs. And in my book, that's pretty valuable. Next I have is Cooper Bowman. But I think he'll mostly be used as second, so I'll just hold off on explaining his performances and give more of a detailed introduction to him in the next segment. So as we cover the second baseman, let's revisit the returning players before we meet the new faces on the second base depth chart. Briefly mentioned last segment, we have Cooper Bowman, 25. He started 2025 with the Aviators, but he had to catch a few connecting flights to get back up here. He got sent down to the ACL, or the Arizona Complex League, on July 10th, got called up to AA Midland on July 18th, played a few games with them, and then got called back up to Vegas on July 23rd. He can be used as a utility man, able to play the infield and the outfield if needed, but he's naturally a second baseman. Then we have Colby Halter, who we talked about last segment. After that, we have Ben Newton. Newton, 23, actually signed with the A's as an undrafted free agent in 2025. The switch hitter was thrown to the deep end of the pool and started with the Aviators at the beginning of the season. And he struggled, needless to say, in his first few performances. He then got sent down to AA Midland in June, and in the same month he was sent down to the ACL Athletics and had the rest of his performances in High A Lansing before getting called back up to the Aviators in September. Finally, we have the newly acquired Michael Stefanik. The 29-year-old played with the Buffalo Bisons, the Toronto Blue Jays AAA affiliate, in 2025. He had a brief stint with the Blue Jays before getting DFA'd by them on June 3rd. Nobody ended up picking him up when he was DFA'd and was swiftly sent to the Bisons on June 7th. He elected free agency this offseason and signed a minor league deal with the A's on December 12th. Alright, so now that we have the introductions out the way, let's get into the depth chart. I really like Stefanik as the everyday starter at second base because he outpaces everyone in what I think are the most important stats. He slashed 287, 403, 383, 13.3 walk rate, 10% strikeout rate, and a 122 WRC+. It's a mouthful, but all that to say, he's able to get on base frequently, either through base hit or by walk. He doesn't chase outside the zone very often, and he's able to create runs better than anyone in the bunch. Next I have Cooper Bowman. He's the second best option because he's able to get on base via the walk. He does have the most power in the bunch with a 139 ISO, and I think his speed is a great tool that he boasts. His speed allowed him to swipe 22 bases, stretch singles into doubles, and increased his defensive range. After that, I have Colby Halter and Ben Newton. Halter would be able to place higher on this list if he recreates what he did in AA Midland. Finally, for Newton, I see him more as a developmental piece that could use some experience here and there. So now we're transitioning over to the third baseman. We can expect Luke Mann, Colby Halter, and Michael Stefanik to play at third base. But before we go any further, I really wanted to slow down and talk about what Luke the Man, as Russlinger calls him, did during the playoffs last season. During Game 2 of the PCL Championship versus the Rainiers, he hit a 3-run home run that drove a dagger through their hearts. Then in the AAA Championship, he flashed the glove at the hot corner with an amazing diving catch. And I'd really recommend watching those clips if you have the time, because it really shows his potential over there at the hot corner. Next, I'd like to welcome back Uribiel Angeles, 23, who split the year between AA Midland and the Aviators. He adapted well coming up from AA and continued to produce at the new level. And since his call-up, he was pretty much the everyday third baseman. As for the third base depth chart, I would have Angeles stay as the starter at third. But believe me, it wasn't an easy conclusion to come to. Mann has more range at third, but Angeles has made less mistakes and has more experience at third at this level. The other thing Angeles has going for him is his ability to not strike out and his ability to get on base. Mann has more power but strikes out a lot, but he also walks a lot. So it could go either way. Maybe have Angeles as the starter at third, and have Mann as DH. And I consider putting him at DH because if Mann can continue to produce, you really wouldn't want to go without his bat. And also, since he's a lefty, it could break up the pattern of all righties in the lineup. But I think I'll have a more concrete opinion on who should be DH once we finish going over the outfielders, and then that'll be the entire roster for the most part. So be sure to stay tuned as we finish the series. And finally, last on the list, we have Colby Halter. And now the last position, but certainly not the least, is the shortstop. There's only 2 realistic options here, but 3 if you include the players that have adequate experience here. So those players being Angeles, Stefanik, and then Drew Swift. Drew Swift, 26, started 2025 with AA Midland before getting called up on July 29th. He was pretty much the everyday shortstop since his call-up. So that's why this section will be the easiest by predicting he'll continue to be here at short every day. A little bit more about Swift. He slashed 318, 383, 417 last season. And what jumps out at me is his WOBA 367 and his 96 WRC plus, meaning that he has some power to get extra base hits and he has the ability to generate runs better than the other candidates, excluding Stefanik. Stefanik bests him there. But what concerns me about Swift is his high BABIP from last season at 442, meaning that most of his success might not transfer over to this season because of the high luck that was involved. And typically with high BABIP, you'll have one good season and probably in the next season everything just crashes down. But hopefully that doesn't happen this season. And so here's how my infield looks like. Like opening day, this is what I think. So from last episode, I'd have Brian Lavastida catching, and then Meneses at first, Stefanik at second, Angeles at third, and then Swift at shortstop. And as I was going through this episode, I was curious and I wanted to take the time machine and look to see how the infield looked like last opening day 2025. And the infield looked a little bit stronger. And how could it not? I mean, you have the 2025 Rookie of the Year, Nick Kurtz at first. And then you had Daniel Susak at the plate. And then you had Daryl Hernandez, which is now the everyday starting third baseman for the A's. So a lot of major league talent. But I guess any lineup would look lackluster in comparison if you have those guys. And I guess the lingering anticipation of what the team will look like after spring training is factoring in here too. Like just a sense of uncertainty, because you have the 2 veterans, you have Meneses, you have Stefanik, who they have major league talent. They've been to the show before, but you don't know if they'll absolutely dominate during spring training, and now you're short 2 guys. And then what's left doesn't bode much confidence. But then you can also look at what's in AA Midland. And that's probably another episode right there. But who do you think should start at third? Angeles or Mann? Do you think Ben Newton, the obvious dark horse candidate, Colby Halter, another dark horse candidate, do you think that they'll prove me wrong and absolutely break out this season? What do you think will happen during spring training? Do you think Meneses will stay? Do you think Stefanik will stay? Do you think anybody that I mentioned who gets a shot at spring training will stay with the Athletics and not be with the Aviators starting 2026 opening day? Let me know in the comments below, or tweet me on X at Taxiway Podcast. That's all I have for you this week. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe and follow on YouTube and on Spotify. My name is Fabian, your lead ramp agent. This has been the Taxiway Podcast. Farewell and Godspeed.